Hello, my name is Michael Eliason. I'm here on behalf of Western Sales to talk about the S600 Combine. We're going to walk around the Combine and discuss maintenance points and features of these Combines today. Starting at the front of the Combine, on our feeder house, we have, starting in the 2015 model year, the 4-strand feeder chain and the 8-inch front drum. This was a change that they made for improved crop flow. Prior to that, in 2012 through 2014, they had a 10-inch drum in the front of the feeder house and a 3-strand feeder chain. When they changed it to this, it was because they thought with the 3-strand feeder chain that the crop flow coming in was hitting that center chain and impeding crop flow, and the larger drum was not letting larger crop mats of material come in evenly. So with the smaller front drum and the 4-strand chain, there was a marked improvement in flow into the Combine. Also in 2015, John Deere introduced the feeder house fore-aft tilt, which enables this section here to tilt forwards or backwards. This is done so that with the John Deere heads, we're able to adjust the cutter bar angle and make it more or less aggressive when it's cutting crop. This is especially useful in crops such as peas or lentils, where you have a very low crop height and need to be able to get more aggressive at times to get all the crop. Moving back, we come to our feeder house reverser gear case. This uses an HD 460 synthetic gear oil, and it is levels checked using the dipstick located right here. The dipstick also has the breather located within the dipstick tube. When you're checking that level, you'll need to have your feeder house at the correct height for checking the level. Please reference your operator's manual for what that height is. Also located on the feeder house is our single point connector for our hydraulics and electrical between our heads and our combines. Our single point connector uses a 31-pin electrical connector and 5 hydraulic connections. These are all connected in using a matching plate on the feeder house and the header that comes together here. And then you would pull this handle forward to lock them together. When you go to lock them together, there is a lock located on the right-hand side of the assembly that you must pull out. And when you pull that out, you can then pull this forward. As you pull this forward, you can see that on the front of the feeder house at the bottom, there are some pins that extend that lock your header onto your feeder house. If when you're pulling the handle down, you're feeling a resistance, it's probably that those pins are not aligned properly and need to be adjusted. If you force this handle down as you're doing that and you feel that resistance, there is a shear bolt located right here that will likely break on you rather than being able to put those pins out. If you break that shear bolt, there is spares located on the back side into the green plate here. When you go to remove the header from the Combine, again, you'll have to pull the lock out and then lift the handle. And again, you'll feel a little bit of resistance as the pins on the front plate retract. And those are all through this cable right here. Our feeder house is driven by a series of belts. This is our lower feeder house belt, which transfers the power from on the Combine to the gear case and across to the other side of the feeder house. This belt is tensioned using the spring tensioner located here. The spring tensioner has a little gauge on it that has a section that is cut out of the gauge, and that's a little notched out area there. When you're adjusting your spring tensioner is where you want the washer to be located. It is properly tensioned when the washer is within that cutout section of the gauge. Starting in 2012 with the introduction of the S600 Series Combines, John Deere put a larger lift cylinder onto the feeder house and is now a 90-millimeter lift cylinder. And this was done for the larger heads that John Deere was coming up with at the time, up to 40 feet, to better be able to handle the weight of those heads. On the left-hand side of the Combine, located behind the tires, we have our header reel drive pump. This drives off the belt that also drives our feeder house. There is a grease point located on there that is a 400-hour interval. Our upper feeder house drive belt, which drives our reel pump, is tensioned through this spring tensioner right here. And again, same as our other spring tensioners, there's a notch located in the gauge, and you will adjust it so that the washer is located within that notch. On our front axles, we have a gear case for our final drives. The final drive uses an 8090 gear oil or an 8140 synthetic gear oil if you choose. They do not use a dipstick, they use an inspection hole to double check your capacities of your gear case. There's also a grease point in there that you must grease on a 50-hour interval. When John Deere redesigned the S600 Series Combines, they also redesigned the ladder structure. With this new ladder, they positioned it so that our steps are tighter together than they were in the 70 series to make it easier to climb the ladder. They also redesigned the lever for swinging the ladder forward. Previously, we had a step on top of the ladder platform you had to step on, which made it inconvenient for adjusting the ladder from the ground. Now they have a lever on the bottom side that you're able to push, and that enables your ladder to swing. With that, it now locks in two positions, fully forward or fully out. You may be wondering, that makes it easy for adjusting the ladder position from the ground, but how about from when you're up in the cab? For that, we have a knob located at the very top here that you would spin. And you can see when I move my lever underneath, it does spin that knob as well. With the introduction of the S600 Combine, John Deere also introduced an optional power folding grain tank cover in 2012. This power fold hopper uses hydraulic flow to open and close your grain tank covers to be a weather resistant topper that enables you to close the hopper when it is empty for lower profile in transport or storage. In 2014, John Deere introduced Interactive Combine Adjust, which is a software suite that works with your display to give you the ability to adjust your 5 main settings in your combine, whether you're experienced or inexperienced as an operator, in a way that is going to help you. It enables you to identify that you have an issue with your sample, whether it be grain losses, white caps, or something else that you've identified, and be able to ask the combine what the best route is to adjust the settings to fix this issue. Since 2014, John Deere has improved it every year to be more and more useful and incorporate more and more options to give you the ability to make different settings changes from the cab. Located here in this black tank is our windshield washer fluid reservoir. On Class 7 combines and lower, there is a brake fluid reservoir located beside that. Those are both accessible through a door located on the cab access platform. On the Class 8 and above combines, there is no brake fluid reservoir because those combines use hydraulic fluid to be a powered brake structure. Also located here is our primary countershaft gear case. This also uses HD 460 synthetic gear oil, same as our reverser gear case. And it has a dipstick located right here that is also accessible through the door that you can access from the cab ladder platform, same as your windshield washer fluid. On this gear case, we have our electromagnetic clutch, which is used to engage or disengage our header. Because it is an electromagnetic clutch, this is why we want to make sure that we are in a low engine throttle when we're engaging our clutch. Our unloading auger system uses this chain to drive our unloading auger and our vertical auger gear case. You can see that in 2012, the S680 and 690 combines were increased on their unloading rates to be up to 3.8 bushels per second. In this gear case, on the Class 8 to 9 combines, we incorporate a greased for life design. On the Class 7 and lower combines, there is a grease point that is a 400-hour grease interval that you will have to make sure that you're getting. Regardless of the size of the combine, you're going to have the ability to open up some doors in this location for cleaning out the vertical auger area. This is done for cleaning out between crops and end of season. There's also a third door on the back side that you can also open up to clean it out completely. If you don't clean that area out, then you will get rotten grain building up over winter, which will cause excess rust and other issues with your machine. This is the threshing area of our combine, and our concaves would be located behind that black door. In 2012, John Deere introduced the variable stream rotor to be used in place of the old bullet rotor that was used in the 70 series. The bullet rotor is still available, but it was renamed the tri-stream rotor. The variable stream rotor was designed for small grains, so that is what we see primarily in our region, though there is the occasional tri-stream rotor around. In 2015, John Deere introduced the active concave isolation system. With active concave isolation, they removed the eye bolts that were used to hold the concaves in place and replaced them with these two hydraulic cylinders. The benefit to these hydraulic cylinders is that it keeps the gap between our concaves and our rotor consistent. With the eye bolt system, if you had a wad go through, the concaves would jump around, the gap would change, and you were not getting an efficient threshing process, and you ended up having losses go out the back of the combine as a result. With active concave isolation, we keep that gap consistent whether there's a wad or not, which provides us with better threshing and better sample at the end of the day. This section of the rotor is our separating section. It contains tines to fluff up our crop as it passes through, which lets the grain fall free from the straw. In 2015, John Deere introduced a tough small grains package. This package gave us a couple of improvements. The first one was our front drum on our feeder house gained an extra 2 inches of vertical movement so that if we had a large crop mass coming in, there was more space for it to come into the feeder house without causing any problems. The second part was that we introduced our heavy-duty separator grates with interrupter bars, which is what this combine is equipped with. Prior to this, this entire section would be one piece of cast that was bolted in place. Now you can see that we have each one of these grate sections as a separate piece that's bolted in. This is a more secure and stronger framework. What you can't see is the interrupter bars. What the interrupter bars are is on some of these little tine pieces, they stick into the rotor assembly approximately 1/2 inch, which interrupts the crop flow as it's passing by. This causes turbulence and causes the straw to fluff up an extra, which results in more grain falling out of the straw material and down into the cleaning area of your combine. The third part of this tough small grains package was a dense pack configuration, which is extra threshing elements in your threshing section of your rotor to make a more aggressive threshing. When John Deere introduced the final Tier 4 engines, we knew that we needed to have cleaner air blowing in our engine area. The solution to that was this air filter. Our exhaust area is now a sealed unit that has clean air blowing into it to make sure that we're not introducing any materials that are combustible into the exhaust area. This filter is used to make sure that there's no combustible materials. It draws air from off of the same area as our engine air filter, comes through this filter, and then comes through piping and goes back to our exhaust system. If you find that you need to replace this filter for any reason, there's a handy decal on this housing that gives you your part numbers of those filters. With our unloading auger drive, again, we use a spring tensioner that has the knots cut out of the gauge to make sure that you have it tensioned properly. Also in this area, we have a grease point right here that uses a hose to bring the grease up into the turret position of our unloading auger to make sure that we're greasing that section as well. At the back of our unloading auger drive, we see that we have a bolt located off center on this sprocket. That is a shear bolt for the unloading auger system. And there's spare shear bolts located right here. Primarily when we see that shear bolt fail is in augering peas, and we have our covers above our hopper augers in the up high position. There is a 2-position setting there, and if you put them in the lower position, you're likely not going to see issues with that shear bolt. With the introduction of the S600 series of combines, John Deere moved from open center hydraulics to closed center hydraulics on the 680s and 690s. They did this because closed center hydraulics are more efficient and offer us ability to do more loads at a higher weight than an open center does. With our rotor, we have a 2-speed gear case for adjusting the speed range of our rotor. We use a variable drive with a belt drive system to adjust our actual speed of our rotor. But to get the speeds that we need, we have our gear case, and we use this handle here to adjust between high, low, and neutral on our rotor. For our tougher conditions, we have our low speed. For our dry conditions and our easy threshing, we have high speed, which enables us to go up to 1,000 RPM on our rotor. And to adjust that, you just slide this handle in or out to get to your different positions that you need. There is an indicator that is very difficult to see back here that if you look on your own machine, you'll be able to see a black bracket that has a 1 and a 2 cut out of the brackets to be able to see which position you are in. At the rear of your combine on the left-hand side, you're going to see that you have a row of switches. The first 2 switches are for lights. The one just turns on the lights inside the combine to be able to see onto your shoe area. The second light is for turning on lights on your gull wing doors to be able to see underneath when you're working at night. The third switch is for raising and lowering your chopper. For that switch, you have to pull the switch towards you and then go up or down depending on which direction you want to move your chopper. The S-Series Combine chopper does not have manual locks when it's in the position anymore, like the 70 series did. The 2 rearmost switches are for manually adjusting your chaffer and sieve position. Again, you would have to pull the switch out towards you before you can adjust your position. Starting in 2016, John Deere offered an air compressor as an option on their 600 series combines. If you have this option, you will see that you have an air chuck located in this position as well. You will also have one located in your engine bay. If you do not have an air compressor, that's just going to be an empty hole on your position. Located directly behind the rear tire on the left-hand side, we have 3 spring tensioners for a couple different belt drives. Again, just make sure that when you're adjusting them, that you have it so that the washer is in the notched position of that gauge. With the introduction of the S600 Series Combine, John Deere increased the size of the cleaning shoe by 30% on the chaffer and 18% on the sieve to give you more cleaning capacity. In 2016, John Deere went to a larger shoe again, increasing your sieve by a further 12% over the 2012 size, and also incorporated some aluminum for some weight reductions to give you better efficiency. In 2014, John Deere introduced the dual zone chaffer. What this does is it enables the rear approximately 1.5 feet of the chaffer section to be a separate adjustment from the front section. This was designed to give you better control over airflow through your chaffer and give you better cleaning capacity again. With the 600 series of combines, John Deere introduced a gear case on our chopper drive to give us the ability to switch between high and low speed on our chopper very quickly and easily. Using this handle, we're able to switch between high and low just by simply pushing it in or out. It is a 3-position handle that you can go between low, neutral, and high simply by adjusting this. It's also, if you're going to be dropping straw, you don't have to remove belts anymore. You just put this into the neutral position and you raise your chopper and you're able to drop straw if you so choose. On your chopper, you have the ability to adjust the stationary knife bank to be more or less aggressive. To do this, you loosen this wing nut and then move this handle to give yourself the aggressiveness that you're desiring. If you have your stationary knives in deep into the chopper, you get a finer cut. If you have them out further, you have a less aggressive cut. With this, if you have them in all the way in conditions that don't warrant it, you're not gaining anything in the fineness of the cut, but you are using more horsepower to do it. So you can save yourself some fuel by adjusting this throughout the day, depending on what your conditions are. In a damp morning, you would probably engage your knife bank a little bit more. In the heat of the day, when it's dry, you're going to probably want to take it out a little bit to continue to get the same amount of chopping, but less fuel usage at the same time. The John Deere S600 Combine was introduced with a 26-foot unloading auger right from the beginning. In 2015, they introduced a folding 26-foot unloading auger that would be able to have the rear section of your unloading auger fold from approximately this location across the back of the combine for less space usage in storage. They also introduced the 28.5-foot rigid auger, which is what this combine is equipped with. And a quick way to tell you of the 28.5-foot auger is you have 2 of these flanges on your auger tube instead of just 1 on the 26-foots. The 28.5-foot rigid auger was introduced for use with the 45-foot headers. Part of maintaining your combine is changing your fuel filters on a regular basis. To do that, you're going to need to shut off your fuel supply. This little ball valve right here shuts off the fuel supply to the combine engine so that you can take out your filters without having fuel siphoned out of there. When you're ready to go, you open that valve back up, turn your ignition key to the run position for approximately 6 seconds, and the engine will self-prime. You don't have to get in there and use a priming pump. Also in this area, we have our power cast tailboard, which is an optional feature of these combines. They're pretty well maintenance free with the exception of this black cover does like to collect debris underneath of it. So make sure that you do remove this black cover periodically and blow that out so that you're not having a bunch of straw built up in there. Final thing in this area is if we come up to the top to our rotary beacon, you can see this little hole right here on the bottom side of it. There is an optional camera harness that you can order from factory starting in 2017 that would stick out of that hole. With that factory wiring harness, you're able to have a camera connected in that will display directly onto your armrest display. This is one of 3 locations that camera harness will be positioned. The other 2 are at the end of your unloading auger and into your hopper. With the final Tier 4 engines, we're now using DEF fluid in our combines. This is our DEF fluid pump located on them, and inside of this pump is a little filter assembly. The John Deere interval on that DEF filter is 2,000 hours. We're recommending that you change that DEF filter on an annual basis instead of at 2,000 hours. And this is helping to reduce some of the issues we have seen on these DEF pumps. In relation to the maintenance of the fuel system on your combine, we do have a sight glass located right here that is also our sediment bowl. It's not easy to see from behind because it is blocked from view by this black tubing. The sediment bowl is just something to get rid of the large chunks out of the fuel system before we get to our primary and secondary filters. Just inspect that sediment bowl on a regular basis, and if you're seeing a buildup, close the ball valve at the back of the combine, unthread the sediment bowl, clean it out, put it back in, and turn your ball valve back on, and away you go. Also located in this area is our Carb deflector handle. This is an option for growers that produce corn. If you're not producing corn, you will leave this in the wheat position at all times. If you're growing corn, then you'll move it to the corn position for that crop and then put it back to the wheat position for all other crops. This black tube that I referenced earlier is for blowing air out over top of your tailboard. What the air comes from is this little turbine right here that is a belt-driven turbine on the backside. This turbine pulls air off of your rotary screen to help clean the rotary screen. By having this turbine in here and pulling the debris off of your rotary screen, we are seeing an improved lifespan on our engine air filters. It also has the side benefit of helping to keep the area above your tailboard cleaner as well because of where the air exhausting over that section. When you take a look at your grease interval charts on the side of your combine, you're going to see a grease point located behind your right-hand rear tire. That's not always easy to see. This bearing right here is the grease point we're referring to, and this here is the grease point on it. That is a 400-hour grease interval on that. On your spindle on your rear axle, there's going to be a couple grease points you got to pay attention to. There's going to be one top and bottom of the actual spindle. There's going to be one on the inside of the wheel hub, and there's going to be one on the ball joint of the tie rod arm. The 2 on the spindle are 50-hour intervals, and the other 2 are 400-hour intervals. With the introduction of the S600 Combines, John Deere introduced the Active Tailings Return System in 2012. What this does is, instead of putting our tailings back into our rotor, we now have a separate threshing system just for our tailings located on the right-hand side on our Class 8 and Class 9 combines. On our Class 7 and smaller combines, the tailings does still return into our rotor. With this system, we have two positions. We have our wheat and our corn position that are going to be basically setting our gap on our rotor into the internal of that system. To adjust between them, you need to pull this pin and then move the handle up until it locks into place. With that handle, if you don't adjust it on a daily basis, you will find that you will get straw and other material built up on the back side of that, and you're not going to be able to move it anymore. So make sure that you are adjusting that handle on a daily basis to prevent it from getting jammed up. We do see a lot of combines come in for inspections where that system has been plugged up and will not be able to move anymore, and actually bend some shafts that have to be replaced so you can get your functionality back. The other thing to worry about with this system is that there is a chain drive located behind this shield. And you can see right here, we have a tensioner for that chain drive that's really hidden behind this framework. Again, it is a spring tensioner and it does have that notch in there, but it does get neglected. So make sure that you are paying attention to that as well. Also, with this tailings return system, there's a slip clutch on the back side, which is what this decal is referring to. With that slip clutch, if you're hearing that your tailings is slipping often, make sure that you are greasing it regularly. If it's not slipping at all, you don't have to worry about greasing it as often. The 10-hour interval that they reference here is a good reference if you're not really sure if it's slipping or not. But if it is slipping regularly, grease it more often than that. Otherwise, you will see wear on the shaft and have to do some maintenance to there as well. As I mentioned before, this combine is equipped with an air compressor system. This is the location of our tank for our air compressor. This is on the right-hand side, directly above our active tailings return. With this tank, you can see there is a little piece of rope here that comes down inside of this framework to the bottom that you can put your hand on. This is for draining the air tank on a daily basis. As with all air systems, it is recommended you drain that tank daily to remove any moisture from the system. If you don't, then that will get jammed up and you won't be able to move it. So make sure you are grabbing that little piece of wire and pulling on it on a daily basis to drain the excess moisture out of your tank. Starting in 2016, John Deere started installing a rotary alarm on these systems. And that is what this little guy right here is. Essentially what happens is if you get out of your operator's seat and anything on the combine is still turning, whether it be your chopper, your rotor, or any other components, that alarm is going to start sounding off, warning you that things are turning and don't put your hand into place of anything that is moving. Once everything stops moving, that alarm will shut off. It is a very loud alarm, and it usually will go off about the time that you get onto your ladder. Just like on our previous models, we have an onboard moisture sensor in these combines. It has been relocated from inside the hopper to onto the side of the combine on your clean grain elevator. With this moisture sensor, there's two components to it. First, this black box here, which is the actual sensor, and this portion here, which is the auger that keeps that sensor full and cycles to make sure that we're getting a fresh sample in there periodically. With this black box, there's a wing nut on the top of it that you can remove and the box will pop off so that you can actually get in there and clean the sensor if you feel that it's giving you an inaccurate reading. There is a calibration to be done in the cab for the temperature so that you know that the grain moisture reading is correct. Most people have not done this calibration if they find that their moisture sensor is not reading accurately. If you do that calibration for the temperature, you'll find that it is actually a very accurate system. In this system, as I mentioned, we have an auger located right here. And again, you're going to want to clean it out between crops to make sure that you're not contaminating your sample. To clean it out, you pull these two pins. This entire assembly comes out. You can pull it apart, clean it up however you need to, clean up on the inside of this housing. Putting the auger back in, make sure that the shaft inside of the housing goes into the center of your auger shaft and then slide it into place. Once it is up, you can put your finger on the bottom side of the auger shaft and give it a spin so that it pops up into place. You may find, such as you see right here, that there's a bit of a gap right now, and I can't actually put my pins in. That is normal. There's two positions where that auger shaft will slide in. Only one of them is correct for putting it in. If you're in that position, come down a little bit, give it a half a turn, put it back up, and then again, turn it so that it goes up into place, and then you'll be able to put your pins into place. With your clean grain elevator and your tailings elevator, we do have our chains in there that need to be adjusted as well. For adjusting them, we need to loosen off the 4 nuts located on the bearing flange. You would do that on each one of the elevators, and then you use this top bolt to adjust the tension on the chain. With that, when you're adjusting it, you're going to reach underneath and grab the chain itself, and you're going to make sure that the chain is able to slide back and forth on the sprocket, but can't be pulled away from the sprockets to be properly tensioned. If you can't get there, then you're going to have to look at removing a half length from your elevator chain. If you have no half lengths left and you can't get it tensioned up properly, it's now time to replace your elevator chain. When we were on the left-hand side of the combine, we talked about the clean out doors located with the unloading auger. On the right-hand side, we have 2 doors as well. These are those doors. Again, just open up your doors and clean out between crops and at end of season to prevent any rot from happening in your hopper. When you're maintaining your combine, there is going to be a grease chart located on the right-hand side, and there'll be another one on the left-hand side that looks very similar to this, that references all of your grease points and the service intervals for them. So you can see in this case, we have our grease points for our spindles on our rear axle. We have our grease points for our different variable drives and for our clutches located on this combine. You can also see we have our grease points for a couple other locations mentioned that are not necessarily obvious to look at, but they are very good when you reference between these diagrams and the combine itself to help you figure out exactly what grease points you're needing to do. On the right-hand side of the combine, we have a series of spring tensioners again. We have 3 located in the main section that are used for tensioning belts. And we have a 4th one on the back side of our clean grain elevator that is hidden from view, but is located just on the very back here. And again, all 4 of them have the spring gauge on them to help you to tension it to the correct level. Starting in 2015, John Deere came out with the active terrain adjust system on their combines. This system lets you be able to adjust your chaffer and sieve automatically as you travel uphill or downhill. It also adjusts your cleaning fan speed. As part of this system, they had to upgrade the cleaning fan motor that is located right here. Prior to this, the motor was not a very quick adjusting motor, and it had a threaded rod at this end that sometimes over time, as it got worn out, would start jamming up on you. When they switched to this new motor, they now use this hydraulic ram that is electrically powered, and it gives you a much quicker adjusting speed and a lot less issues than what you were seeing in the past. At the front right-hand corner of our combine, we have our feed accelerator adjustment handle. This is used to adjust our feed accelerator between high and low speeds. With it, you raise it up and let it come into a loosened position, and then you can come in and manually adjust your belts, which are located back here between your 2 different positions on your shiv, one being here and the second one here. If you come out onto this housing here, there's a decal located there that will show you what the different positions are for speed. Typically, you want to make it so that this matches your rotor. If your rotor is in high range, you're going to put your feed accelerator in high range. If your rotor is in low, you're going to put this into low. In 2014, John Deere upgraded the feed accelerator system by putting it to an 8-wing design. And this has led to better crop flow through the system and better life on our feed accelerator. When you're done adjusting your belts, make sure you tension it up again so that you still have that drive happening. If your combine is equipped with the ProDrive transmission, which all Class 8 and Class 9 combines are, and select Class 7 and smaller combines are, then you're going to have an extra hydraulic filter on your combine located in the front right-hand corner. Make sure that when you're changing out your hydraulic filters, you get this one as well. we are recommending that you change your hydraulic filters out at a 400-hour interval. Our combines are equipped with a stone trap located underneath the rear of the feeder house. The stone trap has a manual door located on the right-hand side. They also have a little pin location right here that can be used to lock the stone trap into closed position. To open your stone trap, remove your pin and then pull this handle. You'll see this door opens up. It is recommended that you empty your stone trap on a daily basis, or if you're in a heavy rock condition, more often than that, based on what you're hearing for rocks coming into your feeder house. If you see a large rock come in, it's a good idea to get out and remove it from the stone trap immediately to make sure that it is not getting further back into the combine and causing damage. On the right-hand side of our feeder house, we have a chain drive system. This chain drive is tensioned in this location here. You can see we have 2 sprockets used to tension it. So you get a lot of adjustments in there. The big thing is to make sure that you keep it well adjusted and tensioned so that when you go to reverse your feeder house, you're not having any issues in this area. When you reverse your feeder house, the drive and driven sprockets on this chain are reversed as well, which causes the tension on the chain to adjust between top and bottom. When this happens, you can get a pretty good slap happening from the chain onto your guides. If your chain is loose, it will break these guides right out of there and cause some significant damage to the system. So it is important that you adjust the tension on that chain on a daily basis. At the back side of the chain, we have our feeder house slip clutch. And you'll see there is a grease point on that slip clutch. If you look in the John Deere operator's manual, it'll tell you that you are supposed to grease that slip clutch at a 400-hour interval. If you grease it once per year with 1 shot of grease, you've got lots of grease in there. You don't want to put too much in there or it will hydraulically lock and it won't work properly for you. Also located on the right-hand side of your feeder house is another spring tensioner. This one works in conjunction with a matching one on the left-hand side of the feeder house to adjust the tension of your feeder chain. If you come to the back side of this, you'll see that there is a slotted hole that this eye bolt goes into. This slotted hole has half-moon pieces that are molded into it. When you're adjusting your tension, again, you want to make sure that you use that notch in the spring tensioner. But in this case, we want to go a little bit tighter. We want to have the nut side of the washer at the base of that notch. When you're adjusting it, make sure that the eye bolt is not bottomed out in the slot. If it is, you can have your spring tensioner tensioned properly, but have a loose feeder chain because the eye bolts cannot move anymore, and so your feeder chain is not actually getting tensioned any further. If you max out that slot, it's time to remove a half link from your feeder chain. If you no longer have any half links left, it is time to replace your feeder chain. Another maintenance item on our combines that seems to get neglected is our rads and coolers. They need to be cleaned at a 50-hour interval for optimal cooling performance. To get into the rads and coolers, we have a couple of little latches right here. This door will open up, and then we can get access into our rad and cooler to blow it out really well and keep everything clean so that everything stays nice and cool. When you're done, close it up and use your latches to tighten it up again. If we don't keep that latched properly, then we can get a buildup of dirt and debris in there, and then our engine's going to overheat, our air conditioning's not going to work, and might end up plugging our engine air filter as well. While you're in this area, take a look through this sight hole here, and you'll be able to see the surge tank for your radiator. Double check that you have the correct amount of coolant in your engine at all times by keeping an eye on that level. You should be checking that level every time you're cleaning your rad and cooler every 50 hours. We also have right here our second location that our air compressor is plumbed to, so we can use that to blow off any dirt and debris in our rad and coolers or in our general engine area. Beside me on my left is my DEF tank, and this is where we would fill to make sure that we have our DEF fluid full. There is a screen in there to make sure that you're not getting any debris into your tank. And it's recommended that you leave that screen in there, despite it sometimes being a little bit longer to fill your tank with that screen in place. When you're done, you put your cap back on, you give it a twist, and it is designed that you can put a padlock on there if you're concerned about someone coming in and stealing your DEF fluid. Engine maintenance, of course, is very important. And one of the first things you got to pay attention to is your air filters. We have a 400-hour interval to check our air filters. There is a sensor in there that if they're getting plugged up before that, the combine will let you know. But the replacement of your air filters is as required based on if the inner filter gets dirty. If you see any dirt on the inner filter, it's time to replace both filters. And yet, otherwise, just check them and keep an eye on them to make sure that they're working properly. Over here, we have our hydraulic oil reservoir. You can see we want to check our level every 50 hours to make sure that we have the proper amount of fluid in there. When you're checking your hydraulic oil level, you want to make sure that your feeder house is in the lowered position, your unloading auger is in, and if you have power fold hoppers, that they are closed. Otherwise, if you have any of those in the other position and you top it up, you could have your tank overfilled and cause some issues for yourself. Next, we're going to get into our engine bay. To access that, there's a pin on the side of our ladder. We pull out, lift our ladder up, and then there's a door that we pull out. It's magnetically held in place. And now you can see we have access into our different filters for fuel and engine oil. So the fuel filters we want to change at a 400-hour interval. Our engine oil and filters we want to change depending on what kind of oil we have. So if we have John Deere filters and oil, it is going to be a 500-hour service interval. If we have a off-brand either filter or oil, one or the other, then it's only a 250-hour service interval. Checking the engine oil level, we have this yellow cap that we pull out, and that is our dipstick for double checking that we have the correct amount of oil in there. To change our engine oil, there is a ball valve located down in this area that when you open it up, there's a drain on the right-hand side of the combine in front of the right-hand rear wheel. That is where that oil is going to drain towards. John Deere combines have two hydraulic oil reservoirs on them. The first one I've already showed you that uses a sight glass. The second one is our main engine gear case, and it uses this dipstick located down here. Check that one on a 50-hour service interval as well by pulling the dipstick, cleaning it off, and then using the dipstick to double check that you have the correct oil level in there. When you're accessing your engine for service, there's a handrail that you lift up, and then you have doors that you can lift to get access into your engine. When you're done, make sure that we lower our handrail back down, because this handrail locks in this lowered position, and it is what holds our two engine access doors down. If we have our handrail in the raised position, the engine fan will actually lift these doors, and then we lose our cooling capacity, and you're in danger of your engine overheating. Located in the hopper at the top of your clean grain elevator is a gear case for your loading auger. There's a dipstick located on that gear case on the front side of the housing. Make sure you check that oil level on a regular basis to make sure that you have the correct amount of 80-90 gear oil in there at all times, and also to make sure that the seal has not failed and had dust build up inside of that gear case. With the new cabs that John Deere came out with in the S600 Series Combines, we redesigned the way that our cab air filter works. Prior to 2012, we had an air filter located behind the cab and another one behind our instructional seat. Now, our main air filter is located above the door before you come into the cab. And our secondary filter, which is our cab recirculating air filter, is located in the front left-hand corner of the cab just on the roof. Those are both an as-required service interval to replace them. In the cab of our combines, we've redesigned the major elements to be more ergonomic. We started with our steering column. So just like in the past, we have one position to adjust our main steering column position. Now we have a secondary dual tilt position that enables us to more fine-tune the position of our steering column to the operator. We still have the ability to do extending steering column as well, so that our operator can be as comfortable as possible as he's operating this combine. We've also redesigned our light switch system. We now have more of an automotive style where on our left-hand side of our steering column, we have incorporated into our switch our ability to change our field and work lights to our transport lights. We also have our ability to incorporate our windshield wipers, as well as our turn signals and our horn position as well. It also has the dual position for high and low beam. This combine is not equipped with it, but in 2017, John Deere came out with foot pegs that can be installed in the combines as well for further operator comfort. Those foot pegs are retrofittable back to the 2012 machines so that you can have them in any of the S600 Series Combines. With our new cabs, we have Bluetooth integrated into our cab. There is an upgraded Bluetooth kit that repositions our Bluetooth microphone from up here by the radio to in the center of the roof directly above the operator. That gives you more clarity when you're using the Bluetooth for speech. We also have the ability to have an integrated heated mirror system and power mirror system for adjusting the mirrors for transportation, and then our radio functionality, which gives you the ability to do Bluetooth streaming as well as phone calls. Coming down, we have our corner post display, which gives us a lot of our basic information, such as engine power, temperature, fuel levels, your engine and ground speeds, and your vision track system for grain loss, and your tailings level sensor. There's other information incorporated into this display as well. Then we come into our main display, which is our 2630 GS3, and will be covered in a separate video. The main control for our combine is still our multifunction handle. With this, we have, just like in our previous models, 3 positions of presets for our header, and now we also have a 4th button at the top for doing our auto track resume. Other functions that are in here are very similar to the previous combines, where we have our emergency stop feature, our unloading auger fold, our loading auger engage and disengage, feeder house raise lower and contour master tilt, and our header controls for reel raise lower and extend and retract. New to these hydro handle is 2 buttons located down here and 2 buttons on the back, which are programmable for some different features depending on the model year of your combine. These were incorporated in 2016. On our armrest, we still have our 2 yellow buttons for doing our separator engage and our header engage and reverse. We also have our throttle position buttons and our transmission controls. This combine, you can see, is equipped with ProDrive transmission because it only has the 1 and 2 positions. If it had a 3rd position, it'd be equipped with the PBST transmission, which was new in 2012, and is a push button shift transmission that is the same 3-speed as we had in prior models, but now we no longer have the gear shift in the corner of the cab. It is an electronic adjustment. We do still incorporate our dials for doing our fine tuning for dial speed and for our HydroFlex options. And we now have a highway transport button that when it is engaged, it locks out hydraulic functions so that they cannot be accidentally adjusted as you're transporting down the highway. In 2014, John Deere introduced some software that they call engine speed management. With this, as you're transporting, if you engage your highway transport button, it's actually going to let your engine RPM decrease if you don't need full throttle for your transport, and this can lead to 10 to 20% savings in fuel. With the redesigned cab, we also have what's referred to as the cab switch module. This incorporates the ability to adjust many settings in your cab conveniently from the armrest. On it, we have ability to adjust majority of our combine functions. We also have ability to navigate our 2630 display without using the touchscreen if we so choose. We have HVAC controls for fan and heater and air conditioning, as well as radio and phone controls, so that if we want to use our Bluetooth, we can control it from here. And the last feature on the cab switch module is some lighting controls to give us the ability to turn on our stubble lights on our headers and at the rear of the combine, our auto beacons, so that when our hopper hits 3/4 full and full, our beacon lights will flash to let our grain cart operator know. as well as hazard lights for transporting down the road that will flash for us both at our regular turn signals and on our beacons.